So, as everybody should know by now, whenever I come here to give a talk, I try not to plan what I am going to say. And in fact, that I usually don't know what I'm going to say until about a minute before. And that is important because that means you're speaking from the heart rather than from a script. And it also means that you can actually innovate and say something new, which is very hard for me to do. There's over 1,000 of my talks available on the internet now, 1,000. So it's very hard to say something which you have not said before. But this evening, somebody just asked a little question. And I thought, I've never talked about this, at least not a long time now, not that I can remember. It is a Buddhist idea of Bodhisattva. Now, you may think that you know what that means, but whenever you give a talk, you always manage to add something new, different, deeper, to make your lives better, to make the world a more harmonious place, and to give more peace and depth of understanding. We always think that wisdom is the way to peace, not war, not force, but understanding. So, 2 types of Bodhisattva I'm going to talk about this evening. And the first type is the theoretical one. And the second one is the practical one. The theoretical one is what people read about in the texts, what you may hear about from monks or nuns who just teach what the sutras say. And that's what we argue over. Who's got the correct idea of the Bodhisattva, and some of them are contradictory. But the other part is the more interesting stuff on how we can use these ideas instead of to create controversy in order to create a more peaceful, harmonious, wise human being who can interact with such harmony among others. Because someone came and told me beforehand, is it really true, the idea of a bodhisattva is someone who puts off their own enlightenment, delays it until the last blade of grass is enlightened, and they want to be the very, very last one? And it reminded me of a story my father told me. This was many, many years ago, before they had ultrasounds. And when people in the country where I was born, which was England, were very prim and proper. And this was one case of a woman from a very high-class family who fell pregnant. And she didn't really want to tell people because sex was not something the English did. And when it got to 9 months, yes, she had a big bump on her belly, but she didn't give birth. 10 months, still hadn't given birth. A whole year, still nothing had come out. And so she just kept her stiff upper lip and got on with it. And it was only 25 years later, when she had to go for some little operation in the hospital, that when they cut her open, they found out why she hadn't given birth after all these years. Because they cut her open and they found out there were twins inside. 2 middle-aged English gentlemen were there with bowler hats, nicely pressed suits, and even umbrellas. And one was saying to the other, "After you, Percy." "No, I insist, after you." No, after you." No, you first." No, after you." Which is why none of them got born. That was an old joke, but I always remember that when they talk about this idea of bodhisattva, saying, no, you first, you get enlightened first, after you. And so I always remember this big traffic jam at the end of time, when all the great bodhisattvas say, no, I said I'm going to be the last, but I said I was going to be the last as well. So there'll be a big traffic jam. No one will go first, just like Percy and Claude in the womb of that woman in England. So that doesn't make any sense to me. But what it actually says in the sutras, the authentic teachings of the Buddha, the early ones, they always said a bodhisattva was only the word applied to a person who's about to become a Buddha from the time they left, the last birth. So it's the time when that Buddha Gautama was born until the time he became enlightened under the Bodhi tree. That was the only time they called him a bodhisattva. And always unenlightened bodhisattva. They always had those two words together, unenlightened bodhisattva. They hadn't become enlightened yet. They weren't a Buddha yet. So it was always unenlightened, someone on the path to being a Buddha. But later on, they wanted to make it so the Bodhisattva was also enlightened, which was a bit sort of difficult. It made a lot of controversy, because, the Buddha never said that. And it also meant that there was this controversy between two parts of Buddhism. And they called the two parts the Hinayana and the Mahayana. And the Hinayana were the selfish ones. We're just going to get enlightened and leave everybody else in the lurch. And the Mahayana, no, we're going to put off our enlightenment and save everybody. Now, which one of those is true Buddhism? And the answer is neither. Because that is always when we start getting conceit in religion. Have you ever seen the conceit in religion? My religion is better than your religion. My religion, we get to heaven. Your religion, you go down to hell. And I'll tell you, I'm going off the track a bit here, but it gives an idea of what you should answer. Because this is a classic story. I have told this before, but a while ago now. There was this priest just before Easter. We just went through Easter. And he was giving a sermon in his church. And one fellow at the end of the sermon put their hand up to ask a question. Usually you can't ask questions in a church. But this guy was very wealthy. And I can appreciate this. When you're trying to get donations for something, okay, ask a question. So he asked a question. And the question was this. He said, you just said that the only people who can go to heaven is someone who believes in Jesus Christ. But there have been other people, really good people in history. People like Socrates. He was a very wise, good person. You got people like the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who wrote these reflections which are very inspiring. You've got like Voltaire, who was very sharp and very funny. Good guy. What about even early? Well, I've missed out one person. What about the Buddha? He was a good person but didn't believe in Jesus. Because Jesus wasn't alive yet. How could he? But what about Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi? This brilliant, very, very moral person. What would happen to him? Does it mean all those have to go to hell, even though they're such great people? And the priest was smart. He said, not much time today, I'll answer it next week. If you don't know, procrastinate. That's always an important thing to do. So, the next day, there's usually on a Sunday they give their sermons. On a Monday, they take a rest. And on Tuesday, he went to his library, he looked at all the books to try and find a good answer to this question. And he couldn't find a good answer at all in any book. So he rang up one of his friends, who was a bit older, made an appointment for Wednesday, had a chat with him. His friend said, that's too deep for me, you've got to go and see the bishop. So on Thursday, he went to see the bishop. They said, no, that's archbishop. So on Friday, he went to see the archbishop. The archbishop said, look, that's very deep. Go and see the theologian in the university. So on Saturday, he went to see the theologian in the university, the doctor of theology. And the doctor of theology gave him an answer, but he couldn't understand a word of it. That's what happens in universities. But Saturday night, he still hadn't got an answer. So he hardly slept that night. He was worried. How can he face this guy the following morning in public? He promised. He had to keep that promise. He had to give an answer. And by when he woke up in the morning after a very, very uncomfortable sleep, he did what anyone else would do. He went to the church early to try and pray for help. And it was probably because he hadn't slept that night. He fell asleep. And as he fell asleep, he had a dream. One of these vivid dreams which you can sometimes have. And in his dream, he dreamt he was at a railway station. And on the platform, there was a train about to depart. And he knew intuitively that this was going to be an answer to his question. So he saw one of the guards, the railway porters, and asked, "That train over there, would it be going to heaven?" And the guard said, "Yes, actually, it is going in there. And seeing as you're a man of religion, you can go in there for free." So he got in a train, and like in dreams, time is warped, so in no time at all, he came to this station with a platform, and you could see the sign on there, Heaven. It was heaven. And as he got out of the train, he went to try and find someone. He saw this guy there with a white cloak and a little white donut on his head. And he said, "I want to ask you 2 questions." And the fellow he met said, "Okay, what are the questions?" "Number 1, what is this place called?" He said, "It's heaven, welcome." "Great. So actually there's 3 questions. The second question, you'd always do this to me, just ask me 1 question, there's another one coming afterwards. But this was the 3 questions. "Number 2, how long have you lived here?" And this guy, "Oh, thousands of years. I've been up here a long time." And the priest said, "Great, you're just the guy I want to see. Now tell me, is there anyone here called the Buddha?" "Who?" "Buddha. I haven't heard of that name." "What about Socrates, this Greek guy? Very sharp." "Nope, he's not up here." "You sure?" "Yeah, I've been up here. I know everyone up here." "No Socrates." "What about Marcus Aurelius?" "No." "What about Gandhi, a little black guy, just came up here recently?" "No, don't know him either. They're not up here." He had his answer. He was right. No one was up there who weren't Christian. So as he was going back, feeling quite self-satisfied, he noticed another train on another platform. And again, he intuitively knew where that was going. He asked the porter and said, "That train over there and that platform, is that going to a place called hell?" He said, "Yes." So he bought a return ticket. You have to be careful. Got on a train, in no time at all, it came to this station. And you could see there the letters HELL, but they're all in different colours, and balloons coming off the sign. And as he walked out of the station, he didn't need to go looking for somebody. Someone came up to him and gave him a big hug. "Welcome, thank you for coming to hell. Do you need a cup of tea or coffee? Do you know something to eat? Do you like Chinese? Do you like Western? What do you like to eat?" And look, I'll eat later on. "Are you sure? You look very tired." "Sit down," said this guy. He was so kind. He said, look, this is really weird. "Is this hell?" He said, "Yes, it's hell." "Are you sure you don't want something to eat? We have really nice curry up here. Curry puffs are very, very good. Almost as good as you can get over there in the reception area of the Buddhist Society. Really good stuff." And he said, "Look, okay, this is hell. How long have you been here?" He said, "Thousands of years. Are you sure you don't want anything to drink?" And the priest said, "Look, hang on a minute. Don't be so fast. Well, this is weird. Because anybody up here called the Buddha, oh, the Buddha, so wise, so compassionate. Oh, he's one of the most famous people down here." What about Socrates? "Oh, you should see the stuff he writes. He's just so profound." Voltaire, oh, so funny. Gandhi, oh, it's so nice that this guy has come down here. A new arrival. He's just so pure in his virtue. He's a great guy. We know all these guys. And the priest would say, "Look, this is really weird. Very, very strange, because no, my religion says these people should be down here in hell. But my religion said this should be a place of torment, not a place of kindness and compassion and happiness." And the guy said, "Oh, yes, it used to be like that before the Buddha came down here." That's a little old story, because it's not true, of course, but what it means is it's people make the place. Never the place makes the people. It's the people make the place. Wherever good people go, they make the place kind, beautiful, wonderful, lovely, compassionate and kind. Always remember that. So sometimes the books say one thing, And it's an approximation. Yeah, it's sort of right what some books say about, in this case, bodhisattvas and giving up your enlightenment for somebody else. But it doesn't really fit real life. When it comes to Hinayana and Mahayana, both are wrong. And an example I usually give, which I'll expand to see what real bodhisattvas means, often when people get married, when they're in a relationship, you usually find one of the partners is Hinayana and the other one is Mahayana. You know what I mean? One of them is selfish. What they want, what they need when they want it. And the other one is the Mahayana. They sacrifice themselves for the other partner. And many of you may have been in relationships like that. They are dysfunctional. They never work. If you're the selfish one, it's obvious why it doesn't work. If you're in the sacrifice one, you soon get burnt out. There's nothing in the relationship left for you. You've given so much, you've got nothing back at all. It separates, it doesn't work. So that's why both are not the way to happiness, to truth, to freedom. Sacrificing yourself or being selfish. The third way is basically the Buddhist way. In a relationship, it's never about me, it's never about him or her, it's always about us. It's a relationship. That's why this Hinayana Mahayana business doesn't make sense at all. A bodhisattva is not someone who sacrifices themselves for others. It's somebody who works just with this beautiful compassion in whatever relationship they have. They put joy, they put happiness, they put peace, they put kindness in whatever relationship they have, whether it's at work, whether it's in on the traffic coming back home from work, whether it's giving a talk, whatever you do, you put the compassion in there. And part of that is serving. But you don't just serve for other people, because every time you serve, you get so much back yourself. That is why in our monasteries, we don't have roster. Well, we do sort of have rosters, but we never keep the roster. In other words, it may be this monk's job to clean the toilets this week. But if I get there first, I get to clean the toilets. In other words, we just want to serve, we want to give, we want to help. We have this beautiful compassion because you all know, you should know by now, when you volunteer, when you serve, especially in a community where you don't get paid at all, that's where you get your happiness from. You get more joy, more happiness, more good health when you serve than when you just think about yourself. This is a great thing which I have learned. I learned this is one example. There was in our tradition, these robes we wear, there's actually 3 robes. There's 2 outer robes and 1 under robe. And when I was a young monk, we had to make them ourselves out of white cloth, to sew them up, which took a couple of days, and then to make dye, and we'd use brown dye from logs of jackfruit, because there's lots of jackfruits over there. When the jackfruit tree died, we'd chop off some of the limbs, and to make the dye, you had to haul water out of a well with a bucket. You had to get this big, metal bowl. You used to have to put water and ash on there underneath to make sure it didn't sort of decay, the enamel wouldn't get off. Light a fire underneath it, boil water, take a machete and chip away at the wood, very small slivers of wood, and boil the hell out of this water and these chips to get the sap out, concentrate the sap, pour it over the white cloth, beat, put it over a line, always moving it so that the dye never streaked. It was really, really, really hard work. Usually quite a few days. And I had to make my own robes, that's what we did. But on this occasion there was 4 new monks were all making their robes together. And so they've been working for about almost 2 days without any sleep, because you had to keep on going through the night. Yeah, they had some tea and coffee, but even if you're on coffee, after a couple of nights, you really, really feel very, very unhealthy and tense, and you're just longing to sleep. So that evening, after the evening meeting, I broke the rules. I went to help them. I went up to them and said, guys, you go and take a few hours rest. I'll look after the dye pot all night for you. And they never argued. They were off. So they can have a rest. You know what it's like when you haven't slept for a couple of days. You feel terrible. So I looked after the dye pot. We used to get up at 3 o'clock. The bell went at 3 o'clock, and about 10 past 3, they'd all come up. They'd had some rest. Thank you so much. And I went off for the morning meditation. Now, in those jungles of Thailand, it was hot. It was very humid, oppressive, and so you always got sleepy. But that morning, I wasn't sleepy at all. I had so much energy, so clear, some of the really great meditation. And I was not tired. So when I went on alms round afterwards, I asked one of the senior monks, what's going on here? I haven't slept all night. Please, I apologize. I broke the rules. I helped these monks. I was compassionate and kind. And I got all this energy. And they said, yeah, that's what happened. When you're compassionate, when you're kind, when you serve others selflessly, you never lose. You don't get tired. You get this big boost of energy. It's compassion energy. Pure, happy, powerful. And when I tapped into that, I realized, being a Buddhist monk, you do this all the time. You give to others, you get back to yourself. It's a whole relationship bit. Everybody wins when you're in it together. It's not sacrifice anymore. It's just fun, energize. It's a heart of any religious life. To serve, to help, to be compassionate, to be kind. And don't just say to be compassionate and kind, to do it for goodness sake. To see if you can help somebody. And when you do things like that, they find it's a much more beautiful world. You find it's a much more happy heart. Everybody succeeds. It's not a sacrifice at all. The more that you think about others and you help others to become enlightened, the quicker your own enlightenment happens. You never put it off. It actually hastens the enlightenment. Some of the things, I was a naturally very kind monk, and for years I stayed in the monastery helping the others, especially with their visas in Thailand. And some of the others were off in the forests and the jungles, meditating in the caves. And I thought, wow, I don't mind giving this to you guys, so you can go and meditate. My meditation was going okay. And when they came back after many years, I was really surprised. My meditation was far better than theirs. I said, what have you been doing? You've had all the time. I've been working hard. And I realized it's not working hard. It's actually this beautiful sense of being kind, giving, serving. I was being Bodhisattva, but I was also fast-tracking to my own deep meditation. This is actually what happens. The Bodhisattva path is not putting off your enlightenment. It's actually hastening it. It's practicing compassion and kindness. Or as I said 2 weeks ago, kindfulness. So don't think, oh, I can't be bothered with all these other people. I just want to go for my own development. I want to go and become a deep meditator. I'm going to go on retreat for 3 months, for 6 months, for a whole year, and no one's going to disturb me. Whenever that happens, there's always something disturbs you. Because you're not compassionate. You're not soft, you're so hard, you'll find everything disturbs you. But when you're soft like a fluffy sponge, nothing disturbs you. Nothing bounces off. You can absorb anything. I was telling somebody today at a retreat who's having trouble with their husband. I said, look, if you really, really want to work with your husband, don't try and cure him. Don't try and be forceful. Don't try and change him. He just becomes so hard if you act like that. Care for him. Give him so much compassion. Be a bodhisattva until he's so soft, like dough. And then you can mold it into whatever shape you want. That is how you change your husband. But then we get it all wrong. We make him so hard, he's impossible to change. And the same with how to train wives as well. And the same how to train yourself. Sometimes we're so hard, it's impossible to mold us. Sometimes we're so hard, it's impossible to sit here and meditate. That's ridiculous. Sometimes we're so hard on the people we work with that they don't change. Haven't you noticed there's something wrong there, the way we deal with the problems in life? Be kind to them, first of all. Be compassionate. Be soft. Until the whole world is just so soft, you can bend it to whatever shape you want. That's what Bodhisattva does. That's what kindness does. It softens things so it can be molded to whatever you want. If you want to come and develop yourself, be kind. Serve others as well as, doing your own little practices. But don't just think that I am alone. I can do this by myself. Sometimes it's interesting when people just don't have much idea of what Buddhism is when they first come across it. And especially our monasteries, they think, oh, do you grow your own food over there? And you all know we don't grow our own food at all, even though we could. We have plenty of land and water there. We don't even cook our own food. Even though I used to be a pretty good cook before I became a monk, and many other monks have been like chefs in restaurants. But no, we don't cook our food, nor do we grow our own food. We are deliberately dependent on you guys. If you didn't come to feed us, we would starve. It not only needs to cook, but it needs to be presented to us. In the early years, Liz, you were here in the early years. Sometimes I was staying in this house in North Perth with one other monk. And because we didn't have much support, people would actually sometimes come the night before and leave us our one meal of the day for the following day. But someone was actually had to come and present it to us. And sometimes, some days, they forgot. And I remember many days, 10:30, no one was there. 11 o'clock, oh my goodness. We could open the fridge, we could see it, we could smell it, but we couldn't eat it. It was against our rules. 11:30, please, come on, come. 5 to 12, 12 o'clock, we had to fast. Many times that happened. Why the hell do we do such things? The reason is because if we didn't need all these services from you, we would be totally self-sufficient in a cloistered monastery saying we don't need you. The way this was set up, the Buddha said, monks, you must let everybody know, we need you. We cannot exist without you. And I remember that if you think you're self-sufficient, you get so lonely, so cold, so hard, because you're neglecting an important part of being a human being. To be deliberately dependent on somebody else. For those of you who ever try to be self-sufficient, can you really do it? We all need others somewhere. So the Buddha set up monasticism so we had to be dependent. As you are dependent upon the monks and nuns, as you are dependent on other people. Self-sufficiency just makes you lonely. You are aloof from other people. You don't have any relationship at all. And you find people like that get very hard. And they don't meditate, they've got no softness, no compassion. So when you're with other people, that's what you have to learn. I often say that one of the problems of our modern society, one of the reasons why there is drunkenness, crime, aggression, selfishness in our modern society is a very simple thing. We live in houses which are too big. Simple thing. Because I remember living in a small apartment. So small you could never escape. Actually, my brother lived in the same bedroom as me. Could never escape from the guy. My mother and father, they had no privacy as well. We were all together. So there's no place to hide, to run away when you were upset. Any argument, you had to keep facing each other. So you had to learn how to let go, forgive, make up. There was no other choice. In your big houses today, sometimes one of the partners is in one room, another is in another room. Kids each have their own room. They hardly see each other. And they don't learn the social skills of forgiving, loving, and getting on with each other. If I was a Prime Minister, I would insist all houses were small. Yes, you wouldn't have as much personal space, but at least you learn how to love and get on with each other. You learn the Bodhisattva principles. And instead of being in it for yourself, you have to work with others. Even in education, being a monk, you can think outside of the box. You see weird stuff which actually could work. In education, you know why it is, again, that it's so hard to find a partner who you can cooperate with? Even when you find a partner, there's always competition. When you go to work, people are competing in the same office instead of learning how to cooperate together. I remember a person who came here many years ago. He migrated from West Germany before the fall of the Berlin Wall and unification, when the West German economy was probably the best in the whole world. And he told me that when he came to Australia, his friends asked him, why was the German economy doing so good? And he said, because he learned in Germany to work in the same direction with his fellow office workers. He said, here in Australia, you work like this, against each other. There's too much competition, never enough cooperation. And when he said that, I realized one of the reasons for that is in school, where we have to compete, even with our best friend, in the examinations, to get to the good universities, to get in the right courses. We're competing. And so our education system actually encourages competition, and we're really good at that. But what it doesn't emphasize is the human skill which is so important for happiness and success in life, cooperation. So I suggested if we could reward cooperation in schools, then that would be something which they would have to learn. And the only way to do that, I said, every year in the class which you belong, maybe 60% of your final score is your personal result, what you did in the exams, your own personal score. The other 40% is averaged over the class to which you belong. So if other kids do badly, you do badly. If other kids do well, you do well. So you get rewarded by cooperation with maybe the clever kids cooperate with the weak kids to help them along, because that reflects what's necessary in real life. The ability to work together for a common good, cooperation. Reward that in our education system, in our universities too. And then we won't just have people who are great competitors. We'll have also people who can cooperate, work together. They learn the skills which will keep them in a relationship together once they get married. We'll learn how the skills of how to work together in an office, rather than always having office politics and competing with each other. We'll have a far more successful world, because cooperation is part of the Bodhisattva thing. Not me, not them, but always us. And when we learn that cooperation skills, we all go to enlightenment together. It's not I give up and you go first. It's not just after you, Claude, no, after you, Percy. You say, let's go together, so you all come out at the right time. Now, this is what it means by being kind. You find that kindness, that compassion is important in all spiritual paths. And sometimes, again, it's not emphasized enough. So much so that we can be compassionate to our own friends, but can you be compassionate to others as well? Can you be compassionate to Muslim terrorists who blow up your children? Can you be kind? People always ask me this. They said, there must be a limit to compassion. There must be some people in this world who just don't deserve compassion, who need to be punished. And they've asked me, Ajahn Brahma, have you known anybody who doesn't need to be forgiven? And I've seen some really bad people in prisons, but they all need to be forgiven. Compassion works, punishment does not. Last week I gave a talk in UWA Law School. These are the future judges and QCs and probably politicians. That's why I like going to give that talk every year. And I told them a little anecdote which changed a lot of the way I saw the judicial system, which was very punitive. And it was from a book which I read as a student by an author called Samuel Butler. It was called Erewhon, which means nowhere, spelled backwards. It was written over 100 years ago as a satire. Just like Gulliver's Travels, when he went to a place where they're having a war over which end of the egg to start from when you eat a boiled egg. They argued and they went to war over that. Sometimes religions go to war for even smaller things, which is ridiculous. So in this particular satire, the fellow went to some place in New Zealand, it's supposed to be, some unexplored place where a society had grown up which was very different than our Western societies. Because there, if you did what we call a crime, you'd be sent to the doctor. Any crime such as stealing, or even violence on another person was considered to be like a mental disease. And so you went to a doctor or a psychologist to get treated. You never got put into prison. But if you were sick, that was criminal, and you put in prison for being sick. And the argument went like this. He said, and in one of the passages in this book, he went to this courthouse to see what was happening, and there was a person in the dock, in a court. He was accused of having a cold, and that was a criminal offense in this society. And the judge said to this guy who was sneezing and dribbling snot from his nose, "It's very obvious you have got a cold, so you must plead guilty. And this is not the first time you've been in front of me, and I warned you last time. You're a danger to others. You spread those germs to other people, affecting the health and productivity of our society. You're an evil man, and it's your fault you have a cold. You don't exercise. You don't eat the right foods. You don't look after your health. Isn't it a fault if you get a cold or sick? Isn't it the fact that you are not looking after your body you get these diseases? Aren't you culpable when you get sick?" There's a really good argument for that, isn't there? There's a really good argument by putting people away when they get the flu, because they stop infecting others. You're a danger to society. Off you go. Now that was just a satire. In other words, by switching things around, from doing a crime and being sick, switching them around, you could actually see that sometimes, why do you punish one and treat the other? And as far as Buddhism is concerned, you treat both. You never punish anything. You treat things. It's a disease. It's something which, if someone's very violent, a danger to society, you quarantine them. Call prisons quarantine places, but don't as places of punishment, so people can heal. It'd be better people afterwards. That's Bodhisattva, that's compassion. And it's incredible when you are compassionate to other people, even to some villains. It's incredible the change which happens. As I said here before, all those times I've been going to prisons in the world to Broadmoor prison in UK to see some really gorillas in there. People have done terrible crimes. They're criminally insane. And going to Changi Jail, Section A, these are the people who just missed the gallows by that much. And going into prisons here in Australia and seeing some really, really terrible people who've done terrible crimes. But I've never seen a criminal. I've never seen a murderer or a thief. I've seen people who've done crimes. People who are much bigger than their crimes. As soon as I see that, you can have compassion for them. If all you see is a crime, you can't have compassion. If all you see is what your husband did, which really hurt you, you can't have compassion anymore. They're a liar. There is no such thing as a liar. There's people who tell lies, but not all the time. There's no such thing as a terrorist. There's a person, a human being, who's done a terrorist act. That doesn't make them a terrorist. Seeing the other part of them means you can show compassion. And my goodness, it works. In my experience as a monk for so long, if you give these really, really, really awful people compassion, it's so rare for them in a jail to be treated like human beings with respect, with kindness. They change. They accept that much more than you guys do, because to them it's really rare. And when you treat them with compassion, that part of them grows. Watering the flowers or watering the weeds, which ones grow? The flowers grow, if you water the flowers. Show someone compassion and kindness, that part of them grows. And they become much better human beings. If you care for your husband, he becomes all soft, and then he can grow and change. If you show no compassion, everyone gets hard, and no one changes at all. So the Bodhisattva idea is whatever you do and wherever you are in life, please have that kindness and compassion. It's not just a very pleasant thing to do. It actually makes for a much happier world. If anyone has made a mistake, please, out of compassion, give them the benefit of the doubt. Don't always be so accusatory and say you're a bad person. Sometimes you know that they were in a bind between a rock and a hard place, had a terrible decision to do, and they made a wrong decision. If you give people the benefit of the doubt, they usually live up to that compassion, that kindness. That's why the Bodhisattva idea is not just part of Buddhism, not just part of Mahayana Buddhism, not just part of just one religion. It's all throughout all real spiritual paths. This beautiful kindness. Yeah, we can maybe just disagree on so many other things, but that kindness is what brings the beauty into our world. It's the kindness, like just, please, somebody told me this story earlier about their dog was very, very sick, taken to the vet, couldn't see, could actually stand up, couldn't hear. It was towards the end of its life. And the owner said, well, should we put it down? And the doctor kept on saying, give it one more day. Give it one more day. And he kept on saying that again and again and again until the dog started to get better. That's compassion, kindness, giving people a chance. One more day. How many times to forgive? One more time. Sometimes that's a hard thing to do. We think, no, it won't work. But in my experience, it always does. If you're kind to forgive somebody, they always become a better person afterwards. Wouldn't you like to be forgiven? Wouldn't you like to experience that beautiful kindness and compassion? That is part of the path towards enlightenment. All these precepts which people keep, all the virtues, isn't it all coming back to being kind, never doing anything which hurts another person nor hurts yourself, being compassionate to other people, animals, the whole lot? Isn't that sort of why we have dogs and cats, to learn a bit of compassion from them? And doesn't that make our life beautiful? And then sometimes, this is one of the things which I think is weird in Buddhism, especially Theravada Buddhism. We're always compassionate to everybody except when we sit meditation. And then it's, sit down still and don't move for 2 hours. Go through pain. That is not Buddhist meditation at all. It is a compassion which works. If you are compassionate, as I said, to your body, instead of forcing it, controlling it, compassion is the opposite to controlling. It is as that simile of the duty of a doctor. It is to, not to cure, but to care. You know, this is powerful little teaching. Any health professional, please don't think your job is to get that disease or that psychosis and get rid of it. That's not your main purpose in life. Your purpose is to care for the person in front of you. Someone comes to me with their problems. My job is not to solve their problems. My job is to care. Because you find if you make compassion the most important part of your relationship to other people, you find the cure happens as a result of the compassion, as a result of the care. People have problems and you care, you listen with kindness, and the problems mostly disappear. The compassion is what works. And any of you who want to get into deep meditation, please be kind to your body and to your mind. Don't forget that. Because if you are hard on your mind, you have all these goals, what you want to get rid of and what you want to achieve. You want to find peace in your life and you work too hard. How can you find peace without compassion? It is a compassion which settles things down, which makes things peaceful. One of the experiences I had visiting a great monk in Thailand many, many years ago, I had all these questions on Buddhism, meditation, philosophy, which I wanted to ask him. When I went into his room where he lived, all those questions vanished. He was so peaceful. I just wanted to sit there. It was from that experience we developed this little simile about people with spikes. Some people have long spikes and they're very, very sharp. If they come into the room where you're sitting, you feel very uncomfortable. You feel like you're spiritually scratched. You know, people like that, you just don't want to be near them. They're very, very hard and harsh. Most people have got average level spikes, invisible spikes coming out of their body. Yeah, you can talk to them, but you get too close and you feel very painful. You're scratched. Some people have got hardly any spikes at all, but you get too close, you get hurt. There's a few people in this world who've got no spikes at all. In their presence, you'll never ever get hurt, never get diminished, never get scolded. You'll be fully accepted for who you are, no matter what you are. Those are the compassionate beings in this world, and that was one of them. They were so compassionate. I felt that there's no way that monk would ever harm me, criticize me, scold me, embarrass me, or do anything. He was just so incredibly kind. And you had the feeling you never wanted to move. You wanted to stay there for the rest of your life. And I understand that that's how one's meditation works as well. If you're compassionate to your mind and your body, your mind and body will like to stay with you as long as possible. No more wandering thoughts. No more falling asleep. No more just thinking of this and that and goodness knows what else. You're so kind to your body, so kind to your mind. You want to stay with yourself. You're at peace with yourself. You just want to hang out together and chill out. You're at peace. That compassion is so important. That is a bodhisattva. It's not a being, it's an attitude. It's not just sacrificing or not being selfish. That's not bodhisattva. It's the compassion which brings peace, which brings freedom, which solves problems, which brings progress in our world. And you can never have enough compassion. And it's not to another person, it's not towards oneself. It's always towards us. And it manifests in service, giving, just having fun together. not being an island and self-sufficient, but being with whatever you're experiencing right now with a kind and happy heart. That is not what you read in the books, but that's what you practice in your life. And that is what a Bodhisattva means. Thank you all for listening. Sadhu. Okay, so now has anybody got any comments, questions or complaints? They're on the internet from overseas. Here we go. Question 1, Mark from England, Bokdul from Australia, and Stefano from France. It's really good. We got from all over the world. Mark from England. My question is, can you give us a few simple pointers to right view? I'm finding it confusing. Right view, this was asked to me the other day in the retreat. I'm supposed to be teaching a retreat. So what is right view? Right view is what leads to peace, to stillness, to harmony, to happiness. You know it by what it achieves. And that, if you want to find that out, that was a teaching of the Buddha to Mahapajapati, the first bhikkhuni, and also to Upali, who became one of the great enlightened beings in the time of the Buddha. It's not believe in this, believe in that, believe in something else. This is a view you know because it works, it creates peace, happiness and freedom. Because sometimes people say, no, this is right view, and they argue with somebody else. That can't be right view if you're arguing with people and creating disharmony, creating wars. Otherwise, we say that Christians have the right view. No, the Buddhists have the right view. No, the Hindus have the right. No, the atheists have the right view. And then we have the different sects of Buddhism have the right view, and other people don't have the right view. And Ajahn Brahm has the right view, but Ajahn Sumedho doesn't have the right view, and this one has the right view. Does that lead to peace and freedom? Of course it doesn't. There's something very wrong there. So when it has things like compassion, peace, then that leads to right view. So you know it by what works. But the other part of right view, which I've taught and is powerful, the two types of religions in the world. The first is a religion which bends the truth to fit their faith. That's wrong view religion. You have a faith, my teacher said it, it's written in the book, doesn't matter, all the evidence points opposite. Say, no, I'm going to bend the facts to fit my faith. The world is flat, because it says so. Okay. And the other one, it bends the faith to fit the facts. That's the real religion, that's right view. Doesn't matter what you believe, doesn't matter what you read, doesn't matter what you listen from your favorite monk. If it's not according to the facts, don't follow it. So that is also right view. What fits the facts. Not necessarily because it's written in the books. It fits the evidence. It does create peace and harmony. Because you practice it and it works. That becomes right view. And that's no longer theory. That's evidence, practice-based experience. Next one, here we go from Bokdui from Australia. Dear Ajahn Brahm, how to deal with this is interesting. How to deal with the subtle racism in Australia. I have an Asian name, however my skills and experience seem to be discriminated by HR people. For example, when on the phone, they can hear my English is fluent and very friendly and warm. However, things go cold when they see I'm an Asian. To give an example, a previous client who I only dealt with over the phone assumed I was an Anglo person. So when they came to a business meeting, they were looking for an Anglo person until the CEO pointed the client to me. I hope Ajahn can offer his thoughts. Thank you. Again, sometimes, I remember just a house in the back of the monks' quarters over there. There was an Italian owned that many years ago. And, he took a photograph of all the leaves which were going into his gutter. And he said, this came from our tree. And we had to sort of give him $2,000 or $3,000 to fix it up. And number one, it actually wasn't coming from our tree. I think he actually collected them up and put them in the gutter himself to take the photograph. And And number one, it doesn't cost $3,000 to clean a gutter. So I remember sort of ringing him. I called him up. I got his phone number, and he said, "What? You're English? You're not Asian?" I said, "Yes, I am English." "Oh, I'm sorry, forget about it." He was actually racist. He thought Buddhist society means Asians, and he thought Asian means stupid, which means we can get a lot of money from you guys. No way. There are people like that. Fortunately, that was many, many years ago. So these days, I'd say, look, in Australia, we're all Asian. You're either Asian, or Caucasian. We're all Asians. That's what we are. We're Caucasian. So that's Asian. It's just another type of Asian. But the only way to deal with that, Bok Doi, is actually just to keep on going. Because after a while we keep on going until people see... We had to do this with Buddhism when we first came here. They thought that I was a girl when I dressed like this. They thought I was somehow mentally unstable, that I was a monk, that Buddhism was the same as Buddha, voodoo they called it. And they thought we stuck pins in dolls. But what you do is actually you go out there and you have to endure for a little while. But when you go out there, you make your friends and you go to work, and don't be afraid and be proud of your culture, of your heritage. And after a while, you find people say, "Oh, you're the same as us." Of course we are, no matter who you are. For myself, I don't know what country I come from. I was born in England, spent so many years in Asia. I go all over the world teaching, and members and teachers of all sorts of Buddhist societies, and so I don't belong to a race. Because, you just mingle with all of these people. I remember I was going to this big conference, and they had the Malaysian delegation. Malaysian, and they saw me come past. "Ajahn, please come in." I said, "But I'm not Malaysian. I'm not even supposed to be representing you." Actually, I was supposed to be representing Singapore, because it doesn't matter. You're one of us, come in. And I was really proud of that, to belong to any country. So I was in the official Malaysian delegation, even though I was supposed to be representing Singapore and I live in Australia, born in England. Really confusing. So, number two, you just go, and there is prejudice. Unfortunately, there'll always be prejudice. That's a fact. But the only way to overcome that is go out there and make your friends, work everywhere. If there is any problem, just go and see the boss. That's discrimination. I just remember the story of this firm which had a total non-discrimination policy. So when a dog came to apply for the job, they couldn't discriminate. Just because it's of another species, that doesn't matter. It was a secretary job. So the interviewer said, as long as you can do the job, go and type out a letter on the computer. The dog went onto the computer, wagged its tail, and typed out this perfect letter. No typos at all. Oh God, this is difficult. Do a spreadsheet. Went on the computer, clicked a few buttons, perfect spreadsheet come up. How can we get rid of this dog? He said, no. Part of the job is you have to know a second language. So the dog went, meow, meow. So he got the job. That's not discrimination. It's an old joke, but I like that joke. So the HR people, it's really weird that HR people actually do things like that, because HR people, they should know better. They're trained. They know psychology. It always has to be the best person for the job. It doesn't care, man, woman, old or young. We do have laws, anti-discrimination laws in Australia. Please use them. We have to change the culture. Don't just complain. Do something about it. One of my favourite sayings, rather light a candle than complain about darkness. Do something. And you've obviously got the support of most people. And that way that I don't care who you are. I was actually fortunate because I grew up in a poor home in West London. So I didn't realise at the time, there was all migrants went to the school I went to in primary school. There was Jamaicans, Afros, Polish, and people from all parts of the world. Pakistani was one of my best friends. And I didn't care, Sri Lankans as well, I didn't care sort of, who they were. If they were good at soccer, they played on my team. That's all I cared about, how good they were at soccer. And so playing soccer with people from all different nationalities, because this was like an immigrant community in a poor part of London, that was actually where I learned how to be colourblind. And I like that word, colourblind. I don't care what colour people are, or what race they are, what even religion they are. And I'm a Buddhist monk. I don't care what religion you are. If you're a good person, you're my friend. So that's how HR people should work, for goodness sake. So things go cold when they see our nation, so you give them a hot curry smile, warm them up. And after a while, maybe they go cold because they're pretty ignorant, but you stay there, and after a while, they'll learn. Oh, it just doesn't matter where you're from. As long as you do a good job, it's really great. And if you really want to get somewhere, you say, look, Australian market is small. Asian market is huge. I'm Asian, okay? I got contacts. I can do things for your business, which these white guys can't. So try that, I don't know, whatever, but, use your advantages. Okay, last question. Stefano from France. I appreciate what you say on generosity in monastic life. However, in your book you say senior monks choose all the best food for them. The abbots exert power. That's when I was a young monk. When I was a young monk, all the other monks the head monks got the best food. Now I'm a senior monk. I spent the last week just teaching this meditation retreat in Jhana Grove, and I can't stand the food. And all the other monks in the monastery are eating all this delicious food, and I'm working hard and only eating a banana. And I think, it's unfair. When I was a young monk, I didn't get the best food. Now I'm an old monk and I still don't get the best food. Oh. So, no, you just let it go, for goodness sake. I've got enough food. And if I don't eat enough, I always keep a bit spare, just in case. That's my method. Keep a bit spare around here. So if you don't get what you want to eat that day, it doesn't matter, you can fast. You've still got enough to keep going. Always keep a bit of extra petrol in the tank. That's what I say. But that was what they used to do in those days, and they used to take the best food. But sometimes what Ajahn Chah used to do, this was actually taught by the Buddha, sometimes send the best food to the end of the line, to the young novice, and actually send it up so you don't choose first. That was actually a beautiful thing to see. You go first. So that also happened in those days as well. So like real monks, real kind people, real good nuns, whoever you are, you're always looking after other people. So quite often, this monk will say this, that sometimes you do say, if you've got enough food at the end of the line, do you want something more? Sometimes, there's only 2 ice creams, so I take one because I'm the senior monk and then go and give it to somebody at the end of the line. So it's nice doing things like that, because you get much more happiness when you give the only ice cream to someone else than you eat it yourself. You know that. And that's what you often do. Even though I am the senior monk, sometimes somebody arrived at the retreat and they had their bags outside because they could only carry one bag. They were Thai. And I'm on this thing called Chao Kun in Thai, and that's really high monk. So I got their bags and carried it in for them. You can't do that! Stop me. And I love having fun like that, doing things which I'm not supposed to do. It's not breaking the rules, but in Sri Lanka, could you do that? Would you allow a monk to carry your bags? You'd have to be fast to stop me, because I'd do it. Because that's the fun part, serving other people, looking after other people, being kind to other people, being compassionate. That is more important than anything else. And if any of you ever go to the monastery where I live, if ever you go over to come here to Perth and go to Bodhinyana Monastery, I invite you to look in our book of monastic rules. Well, these are all the little rules about Bodhinyana Monastery, what you can do, what you can't do. And this is no joke, the first rule above all others, be compassionate. Without that rule, what do all the other rules mean? You've got to get up at a certain time, you've got to wash your bowl this way, you've got to put your robe on this way, you've got to do that. What does that really mean if you're not kind? So all rules start with kindness, compassion. first of all. Whoever sits where, whoever has the first piece of food, compassion is the most important. That's why we have a very happy monastery, which you can come and see. That's why we have a happy Buddhist society. Yeah, there are rules about your dress, rules about what you do when there's a talk. But if you misbehave, I'd always be compassionate. Once, I'll just finish this story. Once during the Friday evening talk, the meditation, was it was a girl sitting over there, fell asleep and started snoring during the meditation. Really loud snores. Somebody woke them up, and I really criticized the one who woke them up. So let her sleep, for goodness sake. Because you know that she was a victim of domestic abuse. And she hadn't slept for days. She hadn't contacted the right people yet. And she said that when she came in here, it was the first place she felt in days where she was safe. And she just caught up on her sleeve. She felt safe here. She felt respected and felt the kindness here. And it was quite natural. She just needed to sleep desperately. So she went to sleep. I said, please let her go to sleep. Isn't that more important than having rules? That is number one rule. Be kind, be compassionate. So please remember that wherever you are. Monastic life, in the office, where you work, please be kind. Number one. Then you make a very beautiful world. And you never ever lose. It's a Bodhisattva path, which as a Theravada monk I follow. Quickest way to enlightenment. Okay, thank you. Any questions from in here? Okay, so was there one? Over there in the corner? I can't see over there in the corner. Where is it? Can you put your hand up? Any question? Oh, right up there, yeah. Okay, you've got to Moon, you've got to run. Run. Quick. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I fully agree with what you said, that we should be compassionate towards everybody.
You fully agree with what I say, that's a relief.
But I have a question regarding what you said, that punishment doesn't work. Compassion work. But if you go back 2,500 years to Buddha's time, there was a monk called Devadatta.
Yes.
Okay, so Buddha extended compassion towards him.
Yes.
And Devadatta attempted to even
kill him, yes.
Kill him.
Yes.
So if we come back to present day, if we don't punish the criminals, and if we extend compassion without punishing them,
yes.
So what would be the situation?
What would be the situation? Number one, there'd be far more honesty in this world. I gave this talk some time ago. Why do people lie? Why is it so hard to find the truth? Why in politics there's so much lying? Why in a family, husbands and wives lie to each other, kids lie to the parents? Why? It's because if you lie and hide the truth, you won't get punished. If you tell the truth, you'll be in trouble. Number one, punishment, or rather the fear of punishment, drives the truth underground and encourages lies. Truth and reconciliation commissions, such as started by Desmond Tutu, realize that only if there's no punishment, amnesty, can the truth come out, and the truth is healing by itself. The punishment hides the truth and delays the healing. Look, you're Sri Lankan. What happened after the end of the war with the Tamil Tigers? Now I'm totally against the United Nations, who wants to have a commission to punish people on both sides who had human rights abuses. That will never find out the truth or have any healing. It's just revenge again. People say, but people did disgusting things to each other. It needs to be punished. If that is going to be the case, punishment, the truth will never come out, healing won't happen, and those two communities will bear the scars for years to come. A Truth and Reconciliation Commission. No punishments. Let people say what they did. It was the height of a war, and as you know, that war goes back centuries. So, how can we have healing? Please let everyone be honest. Who did what to whom? But absolutely no punishment. When there's punishment, the truth will always disappear. Why do people do these mean and cruel things to people? All the punishments in the prisons in the world, does that ever stop crime? Do the prison populations ever get less? Do we actually solve the problem? Ask any psychologist, especially prison psychologists. Prisons don't work. A lot of the time they create more criminals. Isn't another solution? Instead of going the same way year after year, decade after decade, century after century, thinking punishment is the way to healing. It does not work, which is why the Buddha never punished Devadatta. Why there is no mechanism in the Buddhist monastic code of punishment. He said, put aside the rods and the whips. They don't work. This is an important thing for me because I want to leave this world a better place. Obviously, it's not a case of just ignoring. When there's a problem, it needs to be dealt with. And the first thing we have to find the truth. How difficult it is in courts to find out who did what. To find the truth. And some of the times, there was a fellow who came here, he was put in jail for about 20, 30 years. Totally, it was a bad case. He was innocent. He was put in jail for that. There's other people who should be in jail in the sense they did a crime, but they got off. It's so hard to find out the truth when there's a fear of punishment. It's so hard for your children to tell you what's happened. When they come and tell me, Dad will kill me if he found out. And the children really need to tell Dad, so the Dad can help them. Punishment hides the truth. And when you hide the truth, it festers and becomes toxic. So that's why, when I see things, punishment in all levels is just a medieval response to the difficulties and problems in the world. And if we really want healing and to move forward, please stop all these punishments. Just look at how many wars are just revenge. You blew up the Twin Towers, therefore we'll have to invade Iraq. You blew up my friend, therefore I'm going to blow you up. You insulted Islam, therefore we're going to bomb you. That's punishment. And of course it just keeps the violence and the pain and the tears flowing like rivers through our world. There must be another way. And my goodness, there is another way. And that is no punishment, but truth. And when there is a problem there is a person who is killed, raped, whatever it is, no punishment, but finding out the cause of the problem, rehabilitating. If they can't be rehabilitated, quarantine, but with respect and dignity, for goodness sake. If they are a danger to others, just like anyone who has, say, SARS or bird flu, quarantine, for goodness sake. They're a harm to others, but not through cruelty or punishment. And it's so obvious to me. I can't see why other people don't do this. But actually, by telling these people over in the law school, who knows, maybe the idea may grow. By telling this on the internet, can't we actually, some jurisdictions, try this, see if it works? Because other things don't work. You know that. Judicial system is always a problem. Law and order. Increase the crime, increase the penalty. Does it stop the crime? The war on drugs. That totally failed by trying to punish people. More drugs today now than ever before. More demand than ever before. More social harm than ever before. Those were the 3 goals of George Bush's war on drugs. Reduce demand, reduce supply, reduce the social harm. Fail on 3 counts. It's not working. As you all know, you just see what's happening in Perth. Is there another way? Of course there's another way, for goodness sake. Don't treat these things as a crime. Treat these things as almost like a disease, not to be punished. There was a kid I was in a house with as a student. He overdosed on heroin. His friends were too afraid to call the ambulance because they thought that he'd be punished and put in jail or something. He was lucky to survive. Some kids don't survive because they're afraid of the punishment. You've been taking heroin and your kids die. So be careful of this punishment business. It hides the truth and stops the healing. Please excuse me for being passionate about this, but I've seen this too many times. I've been in too many prisons, seen too many broken people, and seen people go out from prison and commit the same crimes again. Yeah, they've been punished. They still do the same thing again. What the heck's going on? Okay, anyway, you may disagree with me on that, but please think about it. Okay, we've really gone on too long. It's 9:15. But thank you for listening. And please, if you disagree with me, please come up again. We can talk about this afterwards. But now let's pay respects to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha.